He said it quietly, like it was nothing, like he was telling me the weather. It was a Sunday. We were all sitting at my daughter's dining room table, the one I helped her pick out at a furniture store in Marietta 3 years ago, back when she had just moved into her house and couldn't carry anything heavier than a coffee mug without asking for help. I remember thinking that table was too big for one person. I thought it would be lonely. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things. My daughter's name is Vanessa. She is 34 years old and she runs a small accounting firm she built from nothing after her father passed. She did it the hard way, took on small clients, worked late, drove herself to networking events in the rain. I watched all of it. I sat in the car outside some of those events when she was nervous, just so she knew someone was waiting. That's what mothers do. At least, that's what I always believed. His name is Conrad. He had been in her life for about 2 years when that Sunday happened. He wore his shirts untucked and called everyone Bud, her clients, the neighbors, the young man who mowed her lawn. He said it made him relatable. Vanessa thought it was charming. I thought it was something else. But she was happy. Or seemed happy, and so I kept my mouth closed and passed the rolls and said please and thank you, like I was a guest at someone else's table. Which, by that Sunday, I suppose I was. He had started leaving things at her house early on. A jacket, then a phone charger, then a pair of dress shoes by the door. I noticed the shoes first because Vanessa had a little tray she kept near the entrance, her grandmother's tray, dark wood with a painted bluebird on it, and Conrad's shoes were too big for it and just sat beside it, slightly crooked, like they belonged somewhere else, but nobody had told them yet. Then it was more than shoes. He started sitting at the head of the table at Sunday dinners. Vanessa's father always sat there. After her father died, nobody sat there for 2 years. Vanessa would set plates everywhere else and leave that chair empty. The first time Conrad pulled it out and lowered himself into it, I watched Vanessa's face. She didn't say anything. She got up and brought the bread from the counter and set it down near him, and that was that. I kept my mouth closed. He started offering opinions about the firm. Small ones at first. You should get a bigger sign outside. You should hire someone younger. You should think about relocating to a busier street. Vanessa would nod the way you nod when you're not really listening, but you want someone to feel heard. I recognized that nod. She learned it from me, actually. I used to do it at PTA meetings when people went on too long. But then the nod started getting longer, more serious, and Conrad started saying we when he talked about the firm. We're thinking about expanding. We've been looking at a second location. That firm had Vanessa's name on the door. Her name, not his. And his name was starting to sound like it lived there too. His parents came to dinner twice before that Sunday. They were pleasant enough in the way that some people are pleasant, surface level, careful, the kind of warmth that doesn't quite reach the eyes. His mother, a tall woman with very good posture and very precise opinions about things that were not her business, had asked me once what I did, and when I told her I was retired, she made a small sound that was almost, but not quite, a laugh. I smiled. I am very good at smiling. By the time that particular Sunday rolled around, the engagement had been official for about 6 weeks. Vanessa had called me on a Tuesday night, and even over the phone I could hear that she was happy in a way that was real. Not performance happy, real, and that mattered to me more than my doubts about the shoes by the door and the chair and the we. She was my daughter. Her happiness mattered more than my discomfort. I told myself that. I told myself that often. So I was at that Sunday dinner because I wanted to support her. I brought a casserole, the one with the sharp cheddar and the caramelized onions that Vanessa has been asking me to make since she was 11 years old. I set it on the counter and she hugged me and it felt, for a moment, like everything was fine. Conrad was in the kitchen when I arrived. He looked up from his phone and said, "Hey, there she is," which was a thing he always said to me and I always hated it, but I smiled and said hello and set the casserole down. We ate. It was a nice meal. Vanessa had made roasted chicken, and there was good wine, and she had put a candle on the table, the long white kind, and it made everything look a little warmer than it was. Conrad talked mostly about a new golf club he was trying out and something he'd heard about interest rates. His parents weren't there that night. It was just the three of us. It was after dinner, when Vanessa was in the kitchen rinsing plates, that it happened. I was still at the table finishing my wine, and Conrad was across from me. He was quiet for a moment in a way that felt prepared rather than natural. The kind of quiet that comes before something someone has been rehearsing. Then he leaned forward slightly, just slightly, and he said, "So I've been meaning to talk to you about the wedding." I set my glass down. "My parents," he said, "they're pretty particular about how things run. They're handling a lot of the guest list on their side, and look, I want to be honest with you because I think that's the respectful thing to do." He paused. "They've asked that you not be included on the invite for the ceremony and the reception." I didn't say anything right away. My brain heard the words and then heard them again, like it needed two passes. "They feel like the dynamic would be complicated." He cleared his throat. "They're paying for a significant portion of the wedding, and they want things to feel a certain way. I told them I'd let you know. There's going to be a live stream, so you'd be able to watch from home." He said, "Watch from home." He said it like that was a reasonable thing to offer the mother of the bride. I remember the candle on the table. I remember looking at it while he talked, and watching the flame move in a way that had nothing to do with any breeze in the room. I did not say anything. I sat there and I breathed, and I pressed my hand flat against the table, and I felt the wood, and I remembered that Vanessa and I had picked this table out together, and that she had laughed at a joke I made in the parking lot of the furniture store, and that I had driven her home from the hospital when she was 3 days old with a car seat that took her father 45 minutes to install. And then I heard Vanessa behind me. She had come back from the kitchen. She was standing in the doorway with a dish towel in her hands, and she was still. The kind of still that happens when you walk into a room and immediately understand that something has changed in it. "What are you telling her?" she said. Her voice was very quiet. Conrad leaned back. "I was just being upfront with her about the—" "What did you tell her?" He repeated it, not as smoothly this time, less rehearsed. He said his parents had asked that I not be at the ceremony or reception, that they were covering the costs and had preferences, that there would be a stream. Vanessa did not move for a moment. Then she set the dish towel down on the counter behind her. She walked to the table and she stood at the end of it, not at the head of it, not in her father's chair, just at the end. And she looked at Conrad and she said, "Did you agree to this?" He said, "I told them I'd talk to her." "Did you agree to it?" He paused. "I think we need to be mindful of the fact that Conrad." Her voice didn't rise. It got quieter, which was somehow more frightening. "My mother carried me. She drove 4 hours in a snowstorm to sit with me in a hospital waiting room when I thought I had cancer, and it turned out to be nothing. She co-signed my first business loan because she believed in me before I believed in myself. And you were sitting at a table she helped me pick out in a house she helped me move into. And you were telling me that your parents, who I have met 11 times, want to watch a live stream of my mother watching my wedding from her living room." She stopped. "Did I understand that correctly?" Conrad looked at her. Then he said carefully, "You're taking this very personally." "It's my mother," she said. "This is about as personal as it gets." He started to say something about perspective, about compromise, about how weddings were complicated and families were complicated and surely we could find a middle ground. He used the word logistically twice. He said his mother was very specific about atmosphere, and that wasn't an indictment of anyone, just a preference, and maybe I could be involved in other ways, in the rehearsal dinner or a brunch the day after. Vanessa listened to all of it. I watched her face while he talked. She has her father's eyes, dark brown, very steady. He used to look at people the same way when they were saying something he didn't believe, like he was letting them finish out of courtesy, but the decision had already been made. When Conrad stopped talking, she said, "I need you to understand something. My mother is not a scheduling problem. She is not a variable you can adjust based on who's paying for the centerpieces. She is the reason I exist, and she will be at my wedding, in the front row, watching me walk down whatever aisle I walk down, or there will be no wedding." He said, "Vanessa." "I'm not finished," she said, "and I want to ask you something because I genuinely want to understand. You have been in this house for 2 years. You have eaten at this table. You have watched me build something, a real business, from nothing, and at some point you sat with your parents and the three of you decided together that my mother should watch my wedding on a laptop. I want to know when you decided that was a reasonable thing to offer someone you say you love." Conrad was quiet. "Because what I'm hearing," Vanessa said, "is that your parents' comfort matters more than my mother's presence. And what I'm also hearing, which you maybe didn't mean to say, is that you think that's acceptable. You think that's the kind of compromise I should be grateful for." He said something about her being emotional. That was the word he chose. "I have lived 63 years. I have watched a lot of conversations go wrong and a few go right. And I will tell you that the moment a man tells a woman she is being emotional in the middle of a reasonable argument is the moment he has lost the argument and knows it." Vanessa laughed, not a warm laugh, a short one. "Emotional," she said. "Okay." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "I'm going to need you to leave tonight." He stared at her. "Vanessa, let's not." "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight," she said. "I'm asking you to go home. I need to think, and you should think too. But I want to be very clear with you before you go." She crossed her arms. "I am my mother's daughter. That is not negotiable. It was never available for compromise. If your parents cannot accept that, then the whole structure of what we're planning falls apart, because I am not building a marriage on the idea that the people who love me most have to sit outside." Conrad looked at me then. For the first time since he'd started talking, he actually looked at me. I don't know what he was looking for. Sympathy, maybe. An ally. Someone to say it's okay, don't worry about it, we'll figure something out. I didn't say anything. I looked back at him. He picked up his jacket from the chair, his jacket always on her chair, and he walked to the door, and he left. The house was very quiet after that. Vanessa came and sat across from me. She had the dish towel in her lap, and she was turning it over in her hands, the way she used to turn over her stuffed rabbit when she was small and working through something. I waited. "I'm sorry," she said. "You don't have anything to be sorry for." I should have seen it sooner. She was looking at the candle. He talked about the firm the way he talked about this house, like he was already inside it, like he'd already moved in. We sat there for a while. I didn't rush her. There was leftover casserole on the counter, and the wine was almost gone, and the candle was burning down, and I thought about how the table was still the right table, even though tonight had happened at it. Some furniture survives its worst moments. Some things do. "What do you want to do?" I asked her. She looked at me. "What do I want to do?" she repeated, like she was tasting the question. "I want someone to explain to me how a person can love you and then hand your mother a live stream link." I didn't have an answer for that. I'm not sure one exists. In the days that followed, Conrad called. He texted. He sent a long message that used the phrase "moving forward" 4 times and the word "boundaries" 3 times, and did not once include the words "I was wrong." His mother called Vanessa and said she had been misunderstood, that it wasn't personal, that they had simply envisioned an intimate ceremony and hadn't meant any offense. She used the word intimate to describe a wedding with 230 guests. Vanessa was polite to all of them. She listened. She thanked them. She did not change her mind. She called me on a Thursday evening. She said, "I ended it." I said, "Are you okay?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think I'm okay. I think I've been making myself smaller, so he'd feel bigger, and I got so good at it I stopped noticing." She paused. "I noticed when he started doing it to you." That was the part that stayed with me. Not the Sunday dinner, not the live stream, not the jacket on the chair. That line. "I noticed when he started doing it to you." Because the thing about watching someone you love get smaller is that you can see it when you can't see it in yourself. I knew that. I had done the same thing for her once, years ago, when she was in a relationship in her 20s that I watched shrink her down week by week. I had said, gently, carefully, because she was an adult, and it was her life, "I see you working very hard to make him comfortable." She had bristled at the time, but she heard it. She heard it. A few weeks after everything settled, she called to tell me they were removing his name from all the shared accounts he had quietly found his way onto, a joint account they'd opened for wedding expenses, a credit card he was an authorized user on. One of her staff members mentioned that Conrad had approached them twice in the past year about eventually transitioning leadership of the firm. He had not mentioned this to Vanessa. She handled it. She handled all of it the way she handles everything. Carefully, without drama, with a thoroughness that her father would have admired. The accounting firm still has her name on the door, just hers. At Christmas that year, she drove down to my house, and we spent 3 days doing nothing in particular. We watched movies I had already seen, and she pretended not to have seen. We made the casserole twice because she asked for it twice. We went for a walk on Christmas morning, and she held my arm on the icy parts without being asked. At one point she said, "I want you to know that I would have done it regardless, even if there was no firm, no accounts, nothing to protect. He told you to stay home and watch it on a screen. That was enough." I believed her. I had always believed in her. It turned out she had always believed in me too. We had just never needed to say it out loud before. Some things you carry quietly until the moment you have to put them down in the light and show each other what you've been holding. She showed me that Sunday. I saw exactly what she was made of. And I already knew, but there is a difference between knowing and seeing, and I am glad, even now, even after everything, that I got to see it. I have thought about that Sunday dinner more times than I can count. Not the moment Conrad spoke, though that stays with me too, but the moment after. The silence, the candle burning, my hand flat on the table. I was 63 years old, and I was sitting in a chair in my daughter's house, and a man who had been in her life for 2 years had just told me, politely, that I should watch her wedding on a screen. And I didn't say a word. People ask me sometimes why I stayed quiet. Some of them mean it as a criticism, like I should have stood up right then, said something sharp, let him know exactly where he stood. But I have lived long enough to know that some moments don't belong to you. That one belonged to Vanessa. I think, somewhere deeper than I can explain, I understood that. I sat still and I let it be hers. What I know about Conrad now, looking back, is that he had a pattern. It wasn't dramatic. It never is with people like that. It was quiet and incremental. The shoes by the door, the jacket on the chair, the we. When he talked about her firm, he was building something piece by piece, and he was patient about it. That kind of patience requires a certain kind of intelligence, but it's intelligence turned in the wrong direction. He was clever enough to see what Vanessa had built. He wasn't wise enough to understand what it was built on. It was built on her character, on the kind of person she chose to be when things were hard and when things were easy, when anyone was watching and when no one was. I watched her build herself the same way I watched her build that firm. Carefully, without shortcuts, with a steadiness that didn't ask for applause. You don't get that kind of strength from nowhere. You grow it, over years, by making the harder choice again and again until it stops feeling hard. Vanessa had been doing that her whole life, and Conrad mistook the results for something he could use without understanding where it came from. The night she called to tell me it was over, she said something I keep coming back to. She said she had been making herself smaller so he'd feel bigger, and she had gotten so good at it she stopped noticing. That sentence sat with me for a long time, because shrinking yourself doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small surrenders, a nod here, a chair there, a word you swallow because the moment doesn't seem worth it. And then one day, someone tells your mother to watch your wedding from her living room, and you realize how much ground you gave away. She noticed in time. That matters more than anything else. What Conrad didn't understand, what people like him never quite understand, is that a woman who built something real doesn't need protecting from the outside. She needs someone standing beside her, not in front of her. Vanessa didn't end things because I was hurt. She ended them because she saw clearly what that man's values actually were. Not his words, his values. The choice he made when he sat across from her mother and decided his parents' preferences outranked her presence. That's the thing about character, yours and someone else's. It shows up in the small moments before it shows up in the big ones. Conrad showed her exactly who he was. She believed what she saw. I am proud of her. I was always proud of her. But there is a particular kind of pride that comes from watching someone you raised hold the line on something that mattered, without drama, without cruelty, without flinching. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just made it clear, in plain language, that some things were not available for negotiation. My mother is not negotiable. I didn't teach her that in so many words. But I hope I lived it. I hope she saw it in the way I showed up, year after year, in snowstorms, in waiting rooms and furniture stores, in all the ordinary moments that don't look like much until you add them up. That's what I wanted her to know. Not a lesson. Just the life, lived the way I believed it should be. She saw it. She carried it. And when the moment came, she put it down on the table where everyone could see.